Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of Crazy Talk, where we explore ideas from the fever swamps of the internet to question prevailing narratives with the goal of empowerment and liberation. Just a reminder, I'm not trying to convince you of anything, just sharing thoughts and information. So please, don't take my word for any of this stuff. As always, do your own research. This week we're going to take a look at the overpopulation narrative, and I'm sure you're familiar with it. There's just way too many human beings on Earth. We're outstripping nature, competing for scarce, limited resources, and ultimately doomed. So if you ask most people, I'm guessing they'd say, oh, there's 7 billion people, 8 billion people. Well, let's take a look at the worldometer. And the official tally seems to be 8.2 billion. And if you look at the number of births this year compared with the number of deaths, it's a little over 2-to-1 ratio, 2 times as many births as deaths. So, oh gosh, that's not good, right? There's just more and more and more people on Earth all the time. That's the narrative. And it's a bad thing, right? And we know it's a bad thing because, well, in part, the work of Paul Ehrlich, whose book, The Population Bomb, came out in 1968 when I was, about 9 or 10 years old. And my parents read this damn book, talked about it, and I ended up feeling pretty darn gloomy about the future for the next 20, 30 years. Until finally someone pointed out, none of this guy's predictions came true at all. Not at all. And interestingly, he is still out there pushing his grift. He got real famous. This book sold a couple million copies. And yeah, he's still dooming and glooming it up. Now, Ehrlich didn't create the idea of dire overpopulation. If you go back 170 years, you'll find this fellow, Thomas Robert Malthus. You may have heard the term Malthusian. Well, Malthus wrote his book in 1798, an essay on the principle of population, and I believe Malthus was an apologist for the British Empire, who had gone, of course, all around the world, colonizing everybody, everybody they could. And things didn't go terribly well for the people colonized, especially in the Third World. It was sort of an open-air kind of slavery system where the British didn't have to feed or house their slaves. They were pretty clever about it. And people would be starving, overcrowded, living in filth, and of course getting diseases and such. Well, the British weren't going to take ownership for that. It couldn't possibly be their governmental policies. So Malthus came along and said, no. These savages are getting too much food, and so they're having too many children. That's the problem, right? And yeah, that's the thing, according to Malthus. They're just going to keep breeding like flies until they cause some kind of war, famine, disease, some sort of catastrophe. And this idea led to social Darwinism, the survival of the fittest, all of that kind of stuff, and some really ugly major policies around eugenics, sterilization programs in the Third World, like millions of young women being sterilized in India. People really believed Ehrlich. And it's like, oh, we only have 10 years left. We have to do something drastic. Well, they felt like, yeah, we better sterilize all the poor people. And, that's pretty creepy. Now, he had a great follower, a very popular fellow named Agent Smith. Now, if you ever saw the movie The Matrix, you'll know that Agent Smith wasn't actually human. he was an AI program in human form, and he really didn't like human beings. He's explaining here to the captive Morpheus that humans actually aren't mammals. They function as a virus. They're a plague on the planet and basically need to be eradicated, which is his job. So now, this is really gross. It's an extinctionist viewpoint, if a human being has it. Yeah, hey, let's do the planet a solid and all die. And none of these people ever seem to volunteer to go first. But, I've had friends who had this view. They didn't seem to realize they agreed with Agent Smith. Like literally in the movie, they say, yeah, that's right. He's got a good point there. Yeah. Well, he's the villain. Hello. The thing is, are there 8.2 billion? Here, let's check back in. Oh, no, the number keeps going up and up and up and up and up. But where the hell does that number come from? Now, I'm going to recommend this video on Rumble. In fact, I'm going to recommend Rumble for any information you're seeking that is counter-narrative, whatever narrative you're looking at. This little video, it's only 4.5 minutes. It does a great job of debunking those numbers. India is supposed to have 1.4 billion people. Well, they went to the 300 largest cities in India. I think Mumbai is the biggest with 12 million, and then the 300th only had about 100,000 people, right? Well, they tallied up those 300 cities, and they came up with just under 200 million people in the 300 biggest cities. And it's like, well, that's 1.2 billion short. Where are those extra people hanging out? Are they hiding in the jungle? No. The numbers have obviously been massively inflated. And, you might rightly ask, why the hell would anybody do that? Well, some countries get aid. And the more people they have, the more aid they get. It could be as simple as that. So they also analyzed, how many people are in all the world's biggest cities, in all the different countries. And they came up with a number of something like, maybe about 1 billion people. Maybe, if you're really being generous, 1.5 billion. Probably more like 1 billion people on Earth at this point. Even if you take 8 billion, 8.2 billion as for real, a lot of people who are good at math have pointed out, we could fit all of those people in Texas. And you're thinking, standing shoulder to shoulder, really? No, not shoulder to shoulder at all. Now, Texas is one of the biggest states in the United States, second biggest compared to Alaska up here. But, if you look at the whole world, it's not that much real estate. Well, I was a little skeptical, so I went to my pal Grok. And I said, hey, Grok, can 8 billion people really fit into Texas? And Grok kindly said, well, Texas has about 596 square miles. Breaking that down to square feet comes out to 7.49 trillion square feet. Divide that by 8 billion. Hey, it looks like, that's 936 square feet per person. Not exactly shoulder to shoulder. My first house I bought was 800 square feet, and it had 2 bedrooms. It's like, it's not big, it's not luxurious, but, that's per person if there are 8 billion. Okay, well, what about if there were 1 billion? I asked Grok that. Well, the number per person in Texas bumps up to 7,490 square feet. That would be a humongous house. That's more like it's a sixth of an acre, pretty much. A very large suburban lot, plenty of room for a spacious house and a big yard. That's if there's 1 billion people. Do we all want them to live in Texas? I don't think so. But the point is, the world is much less populated than we've been led to believe. Now, another great video on Rumble I would point you to is this one, which is actually a report from PBS back in the day. And they do a great job also of going through the ramifications of Ehrlich's dire warnings, that we're all going to starve to death. It'll be pretty grim, and we better do something right away. There's the man himself, quite the celebrity, pushing his doom and gloom. I guess you'd say the Greta Thunberg of his day. Well, here's the thing. He was wrong. He was dead wrong. And, a lot of people realize that today. The problem is that we're actually losing population, not gaining it. The population may have been going up for a long time, but now it's going down. And that's because of fertility rates dropping. And also thanks to his stupid book and the relentless propaganda behind it, a lot of people feel it's immoral to have a family. The world's going to hell. It would be terrible to bring a child into this world, right? Well, wrong. If you go to countries like Italy or Japan, their populations have been in decline so much that country towns and villages are being abandoned. You can go buy for a while anyway, you could buy an old stone cottage in Italy for €1. It's going to need a lot of fixing up. You could buy a nice one for not too much more than that. Same with Japan. You can buy a move-in ready, beautiful, traditional Japanese house starting at maybe $10,000. Why? Because their populations have declined so much. And this seems to only be getting started. Thanks to the jab, thanks to poison in our food and water, thanks to poison in the air, fertility rates are dropping. And we need more people, not less. So, the good news is we're not in danger of overpopulation. The bad news is, we should all be having a lot of sex and babies. Okay, so thank you so much for listening to this episode of Crazy Talk. I hope that leaves you feeling strangely optimistic. And again, don't take my word for it. I'll leave links to these videos and resources. Okay, thanks so much for watching.